Okay. So yeah, as for, let me share my screen. Yeah. So as part of the upgrade, we also did Grafana and Prometheus based monitoring system, monitoring and centralized logging system for the implementation. So currently this comes out of the box with Kubernetes setup, but since the deployment was with Docker Compose, we did the same with Docker Compose as well. And eventually we would bring that back to product. We are thinking to bring that back to product. So I would give an overview of what metrics that we collected, and I'll give a demo of the dashboards. Based on that, we can see if we want to add more to the product. So currently the metrics that we scrape and the tools that we used are for getting the node metrics, which are basically the hardware where our containers are running. We have used node exporter, which runs on every node, and it gives metrics about the node like CPU usage, RAM, disk, network speed, etc. And then to get insights about the specific containers, like in each individual containers, how much CPU, how much memory they consume, we have used the advisor exporter. So this runs on every Docker host as a container. Again, this runs as a container, so no need of manual installations on the node or host. And then to get the application status, for example, is the application stable? Is the application up and running? So for that, we have used black box exporter, which gives you metrics like what is the status code, what is the response time the application takes, does it have an SSL, how long does the SSL validity is. And then for logging part, we have used Loki, which is already available with Docker Compose in Bahmni product as well. The same setup has been used. So basically, we install a Loki Docker driver plugin, which would collect all the logs, console logs from the container, and push it to a Loki instance. So we can configure the URL, like where is our Loki instance, wherever it is running, we can just push the logs to the Loki instance. So basically, as a recommended setup, usually the monitoring would run on a separate hardware compared to the Bahmni server. So this is how the setup would look like. So for example, on the Bahmni server, which would run all the components like EMR, LS, Packs, and Udo. Along with that, we would install the Loki logging driver plugin and then few more containers for scrapping the metrics. So for example, Node Exporter and C Advisor, these two run as containers along with the Bahmni's Docker Compose. So these would expose metrics, and from the monitoring server where Prometheus runs, Prometheus would start scraping metrics from the servers. So for example, if an implementer is managing multiple Bahmni servers, they can just run Node Exporter and C Advisor on their servers, and from a single monitoring server, they can scrape all the metrics of different servers as well. So that is also possible. And then this Loki driver, as I said earlier, it pushes the logs to Loki. And all these data from Prometheus, from Loki can be visualized in Grafana. So Grafana is basically the visualization tool, and few default alerts has been configured. For example, if the CPU spikes up, if the memory usage spikes up, or the disk usage goes beyond a certain percentage. So these alerts are also configured for it. Okay, maybe I'll show a quick demo of the dashboards. So this is the Grafana home screen, and here we have dashboard section. So each of the exporters come with their own dashboard. So different dashboards are available on Grafana Cloud. The implementers can choose whatever dashboards they like. But some of the commonly used dashboards are Node Exporter full for the node metrics and C Advisor Exporter for C Advisor. And Black Box Exporter gives us a dashboard. So I'll go one by one. So if I take the Node Exporter, yeah. So node exporter basically gives us this information about the CPU state, how is the system load for the last 5 minutes, 15 minutes average, how much memory is used, how many cores, the uptime, and then the RAM as well. Yeah, and individual graphs are also available, and it allows to choose a time like last 5 minutes, last 15 minutes. This is also possible. And few other metrics if you want to see, for example, maybe I'll just open network traffic. This shows how much network traffic was there for this node. Then I'll move on to the other dashboard, C Advisor. So C Advisor is basically for individual containers. So as we can see, this is a demo setup that is done with Bahmni standard. So we can see all the Bahmni standard containers would be running here, and each of their metrics are collected. So maybe I'll select one of it. If we select one, it will show the CPU usage, same case goes with memory usage, whatever metrics we want to analyze, we can analyze it from here. Network traffic, and then also it shows what is the image tag that is running, what's the service name, what is the instance on which the container is running. Then moving on to the other one is black box exporter. So this basically gives a set of configurations, like whichever applications we are running, we can just configure those URLs over here, and it would show like what is the status of the application and the response time as well. So this gets captured. So once the metrics gets coming into Prometheus, there are different options possible with Grafana. The implementer can choose to construct their own dashboards as well. Yeah. So before I move on, I'll give a pause here to the logs. Any questions or suggestions?
If you can also briefly explain their infrastructure and configurations as such. Is it they are using multiple servers? What configurations are there? Seems like, in one of the thing, there is a fair amount of containers running, right?
Yeah, so this monitoring is a demo setup that is set up on an EC2 Amshu. This is not the implementation setup. But at JSS currently, the hardware is except OpenERP, everything database, OpenMRS, OpenLS, PAX, all these databases run on a single server, single
Okay.
machine. Yeah, it has around 4 CPUs, which has 3.5 gigahertz processor speed and 16 GB RAM.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'll move on to alerting and Grafana. So as I mentioned earlier, there are few alert rules that comes pre-configured with the configuration that we did. So the alert rules include, for example, the container CPU usage alert, memory usage alert, and then this we differentiated for OpenMRS because usually OpenMRS consumes a little high memory compared to others. So for other containers, we have kept it at 1024, and for OpenMRS, we kept it as 3 GB. But this depends on the implementation. Implementers might need to tune this value based on their use cases, the number of users. So for example, if any container goes beyond the configured threshold limit, then from this alerting dashboard also we can know, okay, which is the container that's firing. So for example, here Metabase is the one that's firing. So we can see it is using 1179 MB, which is beyond the threshold of 1024 MB. And these alerts can be sent as notification. Grafana supports different notification mediums, which can be configured in contact points. So we can do email notification, Slack, Telegram, PagerDuty. Different notification mediums are also possible. So this goes with monitoring and alerting. Then coming to the logging part, as I said earlier, we are using Loki. So here we need to choose the data source as Loki, and we can select whichever services logs that we want to see. So for example, let me just choose GCM4chain. And if I do run query, we'll get the logs being written over here. And we can like filter based on the lines. For example, I can just say line contains error. So this will also allow us to do few operations on the log lines. And even we can also see live logs. When you do live here, it will start bringing up all the live logs that are that the container throws up. It's, nothing is coming up. But yeah, maybe I'll choose a different service.
Maybe you have the additional filter error. Maybe that's why it is not coming.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, whenever some request happens, those logs would start coming up here.
Can you show proxy logs once? Does it show the requests?
Currently, our proxy doesn't by default log all the requests. Only it logs only the errored requests. For example, 303, 404, these requests. Yeah. But we need to enable that configuration as well from a product perspective also. That would help us debug if some issue happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all from the logging side as well. Yeah, so these configurations we are thinking of bringing back to product as well. So any thoughts or any other metrics that you would have missed would be welcome.
So if I understood correctly, what you are saying is that these agents, right, the container monitoring agent and the node monitoring agents will need to be installed on the machines that are running Bahmni, and that will come as part of our new Docker Compose setup, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And for monitoring, there will be a separate Docker Compose file, and that's where um, you can run that Docker Compose setup on a different machine than where the server is currently running, so that all the monitoring stack runs on a different machine, and it receives, either it'll pull the information, or it'll have the logs pushed to it on that machine,
Correct. Yeah.
which is monitoring machine. So that is the work that we have to now do next, which is create these monitoring Docker Compose setups and the agent setups in the existing Docker Compose project.
Yeah.
And the current, you also had your current JSS setup on a project. Is that something that's shareable, or does it have proprietary IP address or details in it?
No, that's shareable. Gurpreet. That doesn't have any proprietary IP addresses.
Okay.
Looks
Now,
really.
yeah. No, this is awesome. I think this will benefit a lot, especially on a high traffic, high resource consuming environments. The fact this is also that we can send alerts on multiple channels, I think is also good, not just in terms of email as such. Now, one of the thing is I'm just wondering that increasingly you would probably find that on high volume we'll need to support multi-node deployments,
Right. Yeah.
right? Uh, At some point of time, what's your opinion? Should we invest on Docker Swarm or say Minikube as such? I don't know whether the Minikube can be used on production or not.
Currently, Minikube, they are not recommending it for production use cases though, because Minikube anyways runs on a single node, but it gives options to connect multiple nodes though. But rather than going Minikube route, we can do some on-premise Kubernetes cluster itself, which would be more robust and scalable.
Or what about Swarm? Will that be easier?
Swarm, I have not tried much. Maybe Umair had did a exploration before.
Yeah. So only I think one of the challenges we faced or this thing was with the volume management.
Yep. Volume and networks.
Yeah, volume and networks. The volume management, I think, if I remember, we need to have additional drivers installed over there.
Yep.
But otherwise, if I remember, this was more or less seamless. Yeah, but yeah, if I see no point in terms of investing on both on Swarm or on a Kubernetes cluster, maybe we should start thinking again opportunity based. I would think that next step might be okay. Instead of Compose, can you think about a multi-machine deployment and using a Kubernetes cluster?
Yeah. With one drawback with Swarm is that our Docker Compose would not right away work with Swarm. We need to rewrite few of the configurations.
With Swarm?
Yeah, with Swarm.
Okay. Now I'm saying if
So,
you are investing on a Kubernetes cluster, which I think it will be good, because in that case, even somebody can just get their, I don't know, private cloud or not the standard AWS or GCP, but even if somebody gets say a private cloud, we can potentially deploy the same.
yeah.
Okay, this is great. Questions for Mohan or anything that you have in terms of deployment with Docker?
Do you have documentation on setting up these? Maybe some we can refine, try it out.
David, is it regarding this monitoring?
Yes.
Yeah, so that documentation and adding the new Docker compose would happen in the following weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's something I really want to try out.
Sure, yeah. We'll keep you posted.
Okay.
Maybe as a side comment from our end too, we are already experimenting with using microcades as a Kubernetes distribution because we are using Bahmni on-prem, like on all of the health facilities. So we are quickly running out of space. So we are already starting to experiment on how we can have a multi-node cluster so that it's more scalable because we are quickly running out of space. And soon we are going to be scaling to more sites and even for outpatient because currently we are only doing inpatient. So yeah, well, it will be good to hear what Mohan finds out. And if we find any breakthroughs, we'll share. Thank you.
And I'm assuming that you have your own private servers, not on like the public cloud service.
Yes, that's correct. We are using that's why I said on-prem, like we have our own private servers where we have our own configurations. So we chose to use microcades because when we were comparing it with a Minikube, not unless it was just a marketing strategy, the Canonical guys said microcades is production ready and it supports multi-node clusters, not just a single node. While Minikube, they said it's just for development. For production, you'd have to consider other distributions provided by AWS or Google Cloud. Sorry for the background. Thank you. Background noise.
Okay. All right. I think it requires a longer discussion, Mohan. Maybe we set up a specific call up in the next PAT call, right, to discuss this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If there are no further questions, I'll stop the recording and move on to the next topic. Okay.